Hello and welcome to DCA Committee, particularly to the Great British and Bristol public. We've got 3 simple rules. Firstly, if you've got a mobile, please switch off, please. Secondly, if you need to use the toilets or either side of the main entrance. Thirdly, no fire alarm is planned, so if it goes off, it's a real thing. So go to the right from the entrance, down the ramp, and we assemble by Bristol Cathedral. Thirdly, just to advise you, they are setting up the Bristol Beer Festival next door, so if there's any noise, you can expect it from that. And obviously, some members may disappear for a while into that. Quite seriously, though, any planning application obviously stirs up strong views either for or against. We're here public forum in a few minutes or shortly. Could I urge members please to be tolerant and remember everyone's got the right to have their opinion, of course. So if you could listen to those views in silence, I'd appreciate it. Right, Ali, apologies.
Yes, Chair, we've had apologies from Councillor Hulme and we have Councillor Breckles as substitute, and from Councillor Hussain and we have Councillor Rippington as substitute.
Can I welcome Councillor Breckles and Councillor Rippington? I hope you enjoy it. Obviously, Fabian's been here quite a lot subbing. I believe it's the first time for you, Tim, but hopefully not the last. Thirdly, any declarations of interest, please? No? Then we have 4 minutes of the last 2 meetings. We've got the meetings of the 9th of August. You may remember SCAN, the residents group in Westbury Park, had one issue about the transport point. At the time, we didn't have the YouTube coverage. That's now gone back up. They've seen it, it's been reviewed, and I agree with them, it needed to be refined, so they are happy with that, I'm pleased to say. Can I therefore move the minutes are true and accurate? Do I have a seconder, please? Thanks, Andrew. And secondly, the 20th of September minutes. Again, can I move those are true and accurate? Can I have a seconder? Andrew, thanks. I'll then move on to the action sheet. There are only 2 items, but item 2 falls off because the Chief Planner wished to actually circulate a report which is in the minutes we've just approved, so item 2 falls off. Appeals item 6. I've only got one question here, Simone. Item 68, the Dower House at Henbury. Now, that's an appeal for non-determination. Usually, we've been successful, despite the backlog, the logjam in cases, in actually winning them. In this case, we didn't. It was granted. Do you know the reasons?
I would say, from having had a quick look at the decision, the main reason was that additional information was provided to the appeal that wasn't available at the time, and which allowed the inspector to then overcome the concerns. Unfortunately, with that that can easily happen with non-determination appeals. And clearly another reason why we're working hard on recovering from the backlog situation as quickly as we can. It also, I think it's worthwhile noting that when somebody appeals against non-determination, it means that we can no longer determine that case. And so sometimes it happens that actually when we become aware of an appeal, and actually we could have approved that, but we can no longer approve it because it's taken out of our hands.
Tom.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question about item 51 on the appeals. I've just seen that 52 is connected. It's the appeal which was allowed for the change of use from a 6-bed HMO to a large HMO. I just wanted to get a bit more background on that. I see that the enforcement notice appeal was also allowed. I assume that's because the appeal against the original planning application was also won at the same time. But it's obviously very concerning to see, one of the few cases where we had enforcement action make it onto our agenda is then overturned at appeal.
I can't give you any particular details on that one right now because I didn't have any prior warning that you wanted it. But if I'm happy to follow up, look into it and give you some more detail in writing if that would be acceptable to you.
That would be great, thank you. HMOs are quite a hot topic around our area.
Do any members have queries? No. In that case, we'll move on. Thank you, Simone. Move on to 7 enforcement. You'll note that's notably blank. I do like to see loads of enforcement notices listed. So if you could do your best to ensure that next month. We'll then move on to public forum. Obviously, we've only got one substantial item today, the Memorial Stadium. I've had 20 statements, several of which people wish to speak to, and one set of questions. Can I urge people and not urge state clearly? We have read them at length 24 hours ago or more since when they were sent out. So we have read the statements. So if you could seek to actually summarise the statement in no more than 1 minute. And we do have traffic lights on that side and that side who will give you a warning. Amber, nearing, red, you've exceeded the time, of course. So if you could abide by that. We have a central mic that's already switched on, so you don't need to fiddle with it. I'll call you by name. Mr. Ashdown has questions, so I'm going to allow him to speak first for context, then actually to pose his one supplementary question. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to invite this committee to adjourn this meeting under Section 100B of the Local Government Act 1972. I've noticed that today 18 new documents have been posted on the portal, which I suggest are material to this application and ought to have been considered by you before you decide. They are a preliminary ecology report, a travel plan, a new travel plan, a revised geo report, I suppose that's geological report, a revised proposed site plan, a revised proposed ground floor plan, tree officer commons, nature conservation commons, and revised biodiversity net gain calculations. Can I just remind you that under Section 100B of the Local Government Act 1972, it states that copies of the agenda of a meeting of the Principal Council and subject to subsection 2 below, copies of any report from the meeting shall be open for inspection by members of the public and officers of the Council in accordance with subsection 3 below. Subsection 3 says any document is required by subsection 1 above to be open for inspection for at least 5 clear days before the meeting. And then there are exceptions in the case of emergency, and I would suggest that in this case there are no exceptions that are valid. And therefore, this meeting ought to be adjourned on those grounds according to Section 100B of the Local Government Act 1972.
Mark, I've actually allowed you, because you had a substantive point to make, a little bit more time, but that's given the context of your statement. Do you now want to ask your supplementary question to the responses you've had from the Chief Planner?
Well, in the first instance, I'd like to invite this committee to make a decision on my submission.
With respect, is actually a written question to the Chief Planner, which she's replied to you and copied members and officers, and it's publicly available. Do you have a supplementary question to her?
So am I taking it that you're refusing to consider my request?
No, I'm saying, are you I'm waiting to hear her response to your actual question. Can you ask a question if you have one?
Well, I have to protest formally, and I hope that's recorded in the minutes for this meeting, and my request is recorded as well, please.
Well,
Well, I'm just making my point, because on my basis, this meeting is acting ultra vires. Question one, my question there is that will there be any way to oblige the club to hold these 6 monthly meetings that it has volunteered? I see it's not being conditioned or required, so how are we to know that such an option will be made available to the community?
We can only condition what is necessary in planning terms, and therefore they have not been conditioned. However, clearly, if it is in the club's interest to improve the relations with the community, given that they want to bring forward further planning applications in the future, and therefore they will need to demonstrate at that point that they have undertaken due consultation and have learned from the mistakes made in the past.
Can I piggyback Mr. Ashton's question, pose you the question? He is alleging that the publication is 18 documents, you said, Mark? 18. On the planning portal, so late actually requires consideration, is premature to determine. What's your response to that?
So all the documents that are being referred to are updates to documents that have already been there, and therefore it is certainly our assessment that they do not require further public consultation, and therefore it is okay to proceed, that all the information was available. It's like with public statements or amendments, they are being received at shorter notice and being published just the day before. And that is the exact parallel here.
Right, okay. Based upon that explanation, I'm more comfortable that actually it's appropriate for us to proceed, because I believe that members have not been disadvantaged by having relevant information withheld, and the officer will clearly and has informed us of relevant factors, of course. Thank you, Mark. No, you've got 2 questions which you've received answers from, but you only have 1 supplementary. No.
One supplementary per each question, so we can.
Sorry, I have been corrected, actually. Sorry, we discussed it only last Friday at the area committee, hence the working group, my confusion.
So I see that you don't consider that a conservation covenant is acceptable, and that an LEMP, a LEMPA, local environmental management plan, is an appropriate solution. I also see that you're going to suggest it to be subject to a unilateral undertaking. To what extent? I think the decisions about those are going to be delegated to the officer. Clearly, these are very important documents, and I would invite at least those to be made public before a final decision is made, because I'm sure we'll want to comment on them. And my question that relates to that is, to what extent is a LEMP capable of being enforced if the club declines to comply with it?
A unilateral undertaking is a legal agreement, and therefore it can be enforced. Just like anything in planning terms has to be enforceable that we agree, and therefore that's a key consideration as part of wording the plan.
Right. Can I therefore invite Hannah Donnelly, please? Thanks, Mark. So with questions, obviously, there was a bit of latitude about timing, but can I urge you to keep roughly to the minute deadline? Hannah.
So I'm a resident of Alton Road, which borders the Memorial Stadium, in particular the South Stand, and I object to the planning application of the stand as I've been so adversely affected by the process, and I've sought legal advice and considering an injunction. The club was not consulted properly with the local community, and this project was rushed through in an attempt to get it ready for the current football season. The initial site safety was dubious, highlighting poor regulations from the start. Are you really assured that proper due diligence has been met? I hope the council have given higher consideration to comments made by local residents impacted by this development, rather than those that do not live nearby. I'd like it to be acknowledged that the initial number of objections were much higher, but the council removed and erased them from the system for a resubmission of the application. More personally, I have concerns about the accuracy of the light and noise impact reports. They do not seem correct, and neither expert visited my home. A 29% reduction in light was reported as minor, and that is not minor to me. The changes are detrimental to my living conditions. I feel totally unsupported and let down by this process. No member of the public would have been allowed to do this without proper regulations.
Thank you, Hannah. C. Walker. C. Walker.
Chris Walker, thank you for letting me speak. I'm a 65-year resident of Bristol. I've lived in all over Bristol. I've worked mainly in South Bristol. I'm a very keen supporter of Bristol. Okay. My argument is the ABC. About time. This stadium's been in existence for 103 years. It's about time it was allowed to develop. It's stood with Bristol Rovers for 27 years, and what's happened? Nothing. It doesn't cater for disabled people, it doesn't cater for... visiting supporters have to stand in the rain. It's unbelievably dilapidated and run down. That has to stop. Secondly, Bristol is a sporting backwater. That has to stop as well. Look at what happened at Ashton Vale. Oh, great, marvellous, a wonderful stadium, not allowed to be built. Gloucester County Cricket Club had a long battle to get lights. They only have 7,000 permanent seats. That's the 11th biggest in the country. It's pathetic. Bristol is a sporting backwater. There's no doubt about that, and there's too much opposition to that. Finally, cash matters. Cultural, arts, sports and heritage. Bristol's great at the other three, but sports, it doesn't care. As I said, I am from Bristol, I support all Bristol sport, and I find other people who come to Bristol from outside don't care. Please let this go through.
Thank you, Chris. Andrew Melton.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew Milton, resident. This application provides no additional parking spaces for the proposed increase in match day visitors. This will only exacerbate the current situation. Parking is the #1 reported concern of Bishopston and Ashley Down residents. Rover's website recommends parking on Muller Road and the roads between Kellaway Avenue and Gloucester Road. These not only have to cope with the existing capacity, but also with matches and events at the county ground and the increasing needs of HMOs and parked hotels. Muller Road has already had to have a new bus lane to make it viable for public transport, and more parked cars will not help. Please refuse this application until it contains a suitable addition for parking on site. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank you for keeping to the time. Kevin Hunt.
Good afternoon. I'm here on behalf of Bristol Rovers. The new South Stand will improve the look and the feel of the Memorial Stadium, and it will provide enhanced facilities for supporters, with better provision for disabled spectators in particular. The club recognises that it should have consulted with the local community sooner. However, it has taken steps to resolve that now. The application includes solar panels, contributions to tree planting, and the management of the green space in the southwest corner of the stadium for ecology and for biodiversity net gain. The club has agreed to financial contributions to improve local road safety and to prepare and implement a travel plan to enhance sustainable transport. The noise assessment and the daylight sunlight study Both demonstrate that there will be no material impact on the neighbouring residents. All of this means that there were no technical or policy-based reasons for this application to not be approved. The application is vitally important to the club, and we therefore respectfully ask that you approve this application today.
Thank you, Kevin. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you all. I'm here in my capacity as a ward councillor today, first and foremost, and here to support the Bristol Rovers application. We do know there's been a lot of learning by the club in the way that they initially approached the issues and engagement with the local community. However, we must distinguish between what you're here to consider today as a planning committee from the way they may have gone about things, because they are two separate things. The club has been around for over a century. It's a cultural and economic asset. It supports the wider economic activity on the Gloucester Road and the area, as well as giving the opportunity to many fans to enjoy a game of football on the weekend and in the week. So I really do urge you to support it today. That said, one of the other things that we do need to make sure is that appropriate mitigations are in place. I look forward to working with the club to ensure that the full travel plan that is developed is suitably considering of the wider area of needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dom. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. So my statement is reflecting the concerns of the residents in the area. So I'm also here as a ward councillor, and specifically the residents of Alton Road who live right nearest the stadium. The club have worked with me, they've worked with residents, but there's still quite a lot that needs to be done. We have concerns about the biodiversity report, the traffic plan. Yes, parking, definitely. One thing I did ask the club for was to include an RPZ or to fund an RPZ in the area. This is something that the residents have wanted way before the stand was there. So that was something that I think would be really useful to add into the plan. I also think a site visit would be really, really useful. There are concerns about the light impact for Alton Road, and I think without actually seeing the impact of the development on those particular houses, you're not really going to understand the scale of it. I don't want to delay the ground unnecessarily. Nobody does. Everybody wants this sort of done and dusted, but also the residents need to be heard, and they do not feel heard at the moment. So I would ask for a site visit. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Right, well, that concludes public forum. Can I thank everyone for their contribution? Councillor Hants.
I have no idea whether this follows procedure or not, but following Mr Ashdown's comments, we've had a quick scurf, and there appear to be a number of documents dated 18 of them dated the 15th of November. So that's this morning that they've appeared on the website. Obviously, we've all read the comments diligently. We've looked at the supplementary stuff diligently that was here yesterday. What are these documents here, and how are we alerted to them? Thank you.
Yeah, so we've got a number of documents that are revisions. So, for example, the biodiversity net gain assessment, which is referred to in the report that you've seen. So it refers to a revised calculation. Also, we have an ecology report that we refer to in the updating. That's a revision, that's additional. And then we've got, I believe, we got some comments from some of the officers. So we got tree officer comments and nature conservation comments that have been uploaded. So
my point is, Conrad, these were done this morning. Yeah, it looks like.
Yes.
So are we meant to be looking? Are we all supposed to have known somehow that there were fresh documents being downloaded this morning and based on opinions? You can see the dilemma we're in. It's there may be very minor revisions, there may be massive revisions. I can't tell. I haven't read them.
So what I can say is,
can you help out here? Thanks.
They are minor revisions. I'll come to another document after that, but basically they are minor revisions. They aren't ones that we would consult neighbours on. They're not material. They're just revisions of existing documents. So obviously we've been on a tight schedule here. We've been brought to committee at short notice, so we've had lots of amendments close to the wire. Now there is one document that has been uploaded today, which you haven't seen, and I will cover in my presentation. It's a revised site plan with a very minor alteration to one of the toilet blocks. It's just moved by a metre or so away to protect the cherry tree. But as I say again, that's kind of considered non-material in terms of in terms of consulting neighbours, it wouldn't be considered material of that nature.
Could I play?
We kind of have to take your word for it, really, don't we? Because we haven't looked at them. I mean, no offence. I mean, I'm not suggesting that, but procedurally, this is a bit iffy. I'd have thought. I don't know. I don't think I've been in this position before.
Could the chief planner respond, please?
Can I just say as well, all of these relate to elements where the report was already indicating that there were ongoing negotiations and that they all kind of provide, therefore, updates or improvements in line with what the report had already indicated what was going on. So in a way, it was a confirmation that this is now what we have achieved, which in a way is sometimes you approve something and send the officers away to finalise the final details. In that instance, you've actually had it earlier. They are all sort of revisions and updates to what you've already had in principle, and now you've got the sort of the final position reached, which is arguably better than having to send us away afterwards to say.
That largely seems to repeat what you said in response to Mr. Ashton's question. Can I play devil's advocate? And yes, of course, whilst we are here as as members, informed members, experienced members to judge planning applications, we have to actually, and I do trust and work with our officers in terms of supplying us with the full and meaningful information. So Conrad, Simone, can I ask, is there anything at all which has been uploaded, which is material, which may, in your view, might allow members to come to a different conclusion?
Yeah, my view is that it's all updates. There's nothing that would technically class as material in planning terms. Like I say, we've got a late amendment to the site plan which moves the toilet block by a metre. I mean, that's not considered material. But other than that, it's updates to existing documents which are referred to in the report. And even that one's referred to in the report in the updating. Yep.
Just to endorse what Conrad has said, completely agree. They're all non-material, and I would also say they're all improvements on what we had before.
Thank you for that reassurance, Simone and Conrad. I think on the balance of the information we've had supplied to us, and you've said, I'm happy to rule that we can make an informed, correct decision, determination based upon the information available today. Can I therefore move back to Conrad as case officer? Can we have your verbal summary, please? And of course, whilst we only have one today, and I'm probably going to be a bit more flexible than usual, but tried to keep it to the 5 minutes normally.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so we come to the Memorial Stadium, which we're discussing. So the proposal is for replacement of the current south and southwest stands with a new improved facility to increase the number of seats within the Memorial Stadium and new toilet facilities and concession stalls. So the reason it's been brought to committee, historically there was a previously withdrawn application that was called in by the ward member. However, with the current application to date, there's been 169 objections and 397 letters of support. Now, the main concerns raised have been around neighbour amenity, so overshadowing and loss of light to neighbouring properties, particularly to Alton Road, Strathmore Road, increased noise impact on properties adjacent to the site, impacts on the highway, parking issues. Concerns have been raised with design with regard to excessive height, design, colour, and it being out of keeping with the street scene. There's been concerns raised of poor engagement with the local community, the structure being built without planning permission, impact on ecology and trees, and also it's been raised that the area of natural habitat next to the stadium is landlocked, with suggestions to open it to the local community to improve its management and maintenance. So as we come to the site location plan, we can see the existing Memorial Stadium. And then we've got the existing site layout, and we can see the stands that have been removed and are subject to the application to be replaced. So we were talking about this earlier, a revised proposed site layout plan. So there's a minor revision with the toilet block being moved a metre or so in the southwest corner to protect the cherry tree. So the toilet blocks here is being moved slightly this way away so we can protect that tree and add some additional tree protection. That's covered in the report, but that was received today. So we got the proposed elevations. As you can see, the section of the stand. We've got the outline here of a previous permission from 2012 for the stadium redevelopment, so it kind of falls within those parameters. And we've got the other elevations there from the rear and from the front of the stand. So the proposal itself it proposes to increase the current capacity. So we've got an existing capacity of 9,347. The goal is to go to 12,534. Yeah, some of the terraces will be lost, resulting in that overall figure due to sight lines. So we've got some 3D plans here that show the existing stand and the proposed stand, and we've highlighted some of the properties on Alton Road and Strathmore Road that are the most affected in terms of amenity impact. So we've got numbers 18, 20, 23 and 25 on Alton Road, and we've got 50 and 52 on Strathmore Road and 48. So those have been subject to a BRE light and sunlight impact assessment, and it's considered that the impact wouldn't result in a detrimental impact to living conditions. This isn't orientated correctly, but in terms of sunlight, all these properties are to the south of the stadium, so that mitigates the impact on sunlight to the gardens. We've got some photos of the stadium here. So we've got one here from the car park, one of the stand as is built. This is kind of the framework that is the overall dimensions of the stand. What's got to go in there is the seating and obviously extra things like solar panels on the top. And you've got a view from Alton Road looking north. So we've got some of the most affected properties alongside that stand. So you can see the structure of the frame. Obviously the back will be proposed to be painted blue with corrugated steel to fill that section there. You've got some views from inside the stadium, looking at the stand from the away supporters terrace, and then you can see Alton Road there to the south. So in terms of planning balance, we do acknowledge that there'll be some negative impacts of the proposal. There will be some minor reductions in daylight to a small number of windows and properties to the south of the site. However, following that BRE report, losses are to be minor, and therefore the level of effect is not considered to be material. Due to the increase of capacity, there will be an impact on traffic and parking on match days. However, this can be offset with additional traffic regulation orders and improvements to the travel plan. It's considered that the design and scale is prominent in the street scene from the south, but no greater than the previous stadium approval from 2012. There will be slight impact to noise levels to properties on Trubshaw Close. This is to the east of the car park, but the noise impact to the nearest properties, for example, on Alton Road and Strathmore Road, will be improved due to acoustic screening. Officers consider that material considerations weigh in favour of the proposal. The existing facilities are outdated and will be improved, and this is an existing well-used community facility. The increased capacity and facilities can help to boost the local economy, and we can also include better wheelchair provision with 10 new seats and companion chairs added. And there's a positive score on the biodiversity net gain of 10.15%, and we've also got a 20% offset of carbon generated by electrical appliances, so it makes it more sustainable. So coming to the updating, as you've seen in the updating sheet, several important updates are provided within the amendment sheet. The application, obviously, we acknowledge was taken to committee at short notice. So particular attention is drawn to the following updating sections. So we've got trees. We confirm that issues are now being resolved with trees, and it's been agreed to retain the one cherry tree in the southwest and provide 6 trees off-site, which is in line with BTRS standards in accordance with policy DM17. This can be secured by a unilateral undertaking. We've added some updating on nature conservation, in particular to our response on the Conservation Covenant, part of the Environment Act 2021. We talked about further management of the LEMP, and I draw your attention to revised plans. So in terms of the condition 11, we reference a plan. The actual reference number is slightly off. It's supposed to be 002, not 001, which is a tree protection plan. So I draw your attention to that. Effectively, it's the same plan, but it's the wrong reference. And then we've got a minor revision, as we've discussed previously, with the toilet block being moved. That was a late revision that came in yesterday. And we've got an update to the recommendation following updating. So we are requesting that officer delegation is allowed on conditions and monitoring of the LEMP. That's been added. So I'll come to the conclusion. So we would recommend following delegated authority for officers to resolve conditions 5 and 7. These relate to the events management plan. It's been requested by the agent to work with highways to make amendments to the conditions that we've suggested on the report, and subject to that being resolved, and any issues with any plans, is to grant planning permission, subject to a planning agreement, which would be a unilateral undertaking with financial contributions that are outlined above. They would cover TRO contributions, travel plans, and tree replacement contributions, and will also include a monitor and management of the LEMP. That wouldn't be financial. So that's the recommendation, to approve subject to that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Conrad. We'll take questions as normal first. Fabian, I'll take you in a moment, and then Tom. Just one question for me, Conrad. I understand that because it's one stand at present, although the aim for the regeneration of the memorial ground is a three-phase scheme, that actually at present this only warrants a framework travel plan, but I understand it can then be worked up to a fuller, more active and fuller travel plan, which includes things like parking and potentially residence parking zones, which of course the administration isn't currently sponsoring. Am I correct?
So the travel plan at this stage covers the additional extension, the stand and increasing capacity as is. It doesn't extend to the next phases. And obviously, if those come in, then we'll have to reconsider and review that travel plan, and it may need it's likely to need updating.
Right. Fine. Fabian.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed you said that the plan is to paint the building blue. Given the impacts on light, could we stipulate that it should be painted white or given a reflective coating to actually minimise the light impact on the houses that are closest to it? I'm thinking that the blue is going to be quite dark, but I just think if we painted it, if we just put a condition in to say it could be, it should be reflective or light, would that improve things?
My response would be that the BRE study didn't consider there to be an issue with the impact in terms of neighbour amenity based on what we've got. So if you were to change the colour, it may improve the situation, but whether it'd be down to you to decide whether you feel that would be reasonable to do so, given that report that said the impact was considered not unacceptable.
Tom.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to pick up where you left off, really, with the travel plans, and just to get the opinion of the transport team, you know, whether a residents' parking scheme or something like that had been considered, because I know it's something that the local ward councillors have raised in the past, and it's great to see a cabinet member coming out in favour of that as well. Is that something that was looked at for this application? Like you say, I know the ambition is to get to 18,000 capacity further down the line. It seems to make sense to, you know, be looking at that early doors.
I think that given the minor increase in attendance and capacity, it wouldn't warrant that at this stage. However, obviously there's some ongoing monitoring of the area in terms of parking that would be required as part of the condition travel plan that we would suggest. And in some of that work that's undertaken, we could get kind of clearer picture for what would be needed for the future. I don't know if TDM want to add anything to that.
Yeah, that's right, Conrad. There is a sum identified in here for some waiting restriction improvements in the area, so that would just be clearing corners and driveways. It wouldn't be for the residents' parking scheme, but there is scope in the future. There are going to be some parking surveys undertaken as part of this framework travel plan, feeding into a full travel plan that we'll secure before the next season. So that will be the travel plan that's associated with this particular part of the development, but that would also be able to inform us moving forward with any other proposals, including potentially residents' parking.
So just to be clear, that is sort of laying the groundwork, if you like, for development of a parking scheme if expansion continues, is it?
That's the potential, yes. I mean, there's always questions about the deliverability of a residents' parking scheme, but we'll have much more evidence in this case in terms of parking surveys, because there'll be parking surveys during match days and parking surveys outside of match days that will be able to give us an idea of what sort of area we would need to cover if we needed to go ahead with that. So we're in a better position really from this.
Tom, as you'll recall, I'm sure, this committee has recently, well, over a couple of years, explored the options here, both with the various Bedminster Green things, St Christopher's School, Bulwark, etc. The reality is, although the option could be pursued, the administration is currently opposed to kid caring more obviously. The situation politically after next May may be different. So, yeah. Andrew.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Conrad. Could I just ask about the patch of landlocked natural area to the south of the stand? I think you said in your report that this piece of land cannot be conditioned in terms of public access, but we've heard from Bristol Tree Farm that actually there is a process known as a conservation covenant. Don't know why my voice is so gravelly. Just wondering, can we condition that? Because I think that would go some way to placating local residents who have been quite poorly treated by the club up to now.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of conditioning the covenant, it would be considered unreasonable. That's covered in the updating. The response would be that the conservation covenant is not currently feasible because we do not have Secretary of State needs to designate responsible bodies, so LPAs, NGOs and others, to enter into them with a developer. Bristol City Council neither has designated as one or has applied for one. So following advice from the ecologist, we couldn't do that, unfortunately. But in terms of allowing sort of residents or local residents access to the nature area, it could be seen as something that would impact on the sort of the biodiversity that's outlined. So it could have a negative impact. However, if there was sort of something set up where there was positive management of that area with the residents, but that would obviously have to be something that the club would have to agree to. It would be kind of betterment, really. So we could kind of consider that. I have considered that. I've put in the informatives following the statement of community involvement that the club would like to have sort of regular updates with the local community. That could be a topic of discussion to do that. But I think as far as conditioning it would be considered unreasonable.
Andrew, could I also refer members to the Chief Planner's response to Mr. Stein's question there? And you'll be aware that actually all lead members expressed an interest in this option at the agenda conference, and I believe the case officers pursued that with the club since. But clearly, we all know, as Tom Reynolds said, clearly it's a different issue, but historically relations have not been as they we would hope ongoing in future. It has to improve significantly, of course. P.
A couple of hopefully quite quick questions. Sorry for putting you on the spot there earlier, Con. You could probably sense the panic in my voice. It's like, oh my God. Couple of questions. The event management plan, is that something we could condition or compel the club to involve the local community and local councillors with? Because clearly event management on the day activities is something which understandably concern neighbours. Could we condition that?
Yeah, so in terms of event management, we've currently suggested a condition for events over 10,000, and that would be kind of a special plan set up before each event, and we would involve councillors and the local community.
And we can stipulate that.
So that would be that's a condition we've suggested, and there's another condition that we've got for
when
events.
When you say it's suggested, it's
recommended
actually in here.
In the report, yeah. That's one of the conditions on here. So we've also got another condition for events over 5,000, and that's I think that's a one-off plan for those events. However, the agent has asked to review some of those, and I've spoken to TDM, and we've suggested this recommendation is made to delegate authority for officers to resolve conditions, actually 5 and 7, that relate to the event management plans with TDM. So that would be what we'd be recommending, because they want to make some changes to those as requested by the agent.
Okay, and it's just an attempt to reassure local residents, I suppose. The other thing is about the light. I mean, you said that the reduction in light to 29% was considered minor. Is that a matter of opinion, or is there some kind of rule book which states that under a certain percentage is minor, over a certain percentage is major, or is that a matter of your opinion? Thanks.
We've had a report in, a BRE standard report, which is the industry standard for sort of assessing the impact of light to those most affected neighbours to their windows, and the report is within sort of the BRE guidelines, so it's not considered as a significant impact that would be detrimental to.
My point was, it's not just your opinion; it's an outside body which has ratified your judgment. It's minor. Thank you.
The agent has submitted that via, I think it's BNP Paribas. They've conducted the report on behalf of the agent, and they've obviously. That report is subject to the BRE regulations. Okay.
John.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the report, Comrade. I just wanted to ask, I mean, having read the report, I'm hugely supportive of the club and what it's trying to achieve, and the objections seem to be primarily around the area just outside of the club. And so, do you think there should have been, or there would be, a benefit to a site visit by the committee to understand the impact on that local area? Or do you feel that that wouldn't add anything for us to determine on top of what you've reported?
In terms of a visit to that area, that as you're asking the question on, I think that, like I said, it's kind of something that would be betterment to allow access to. And in terms of the sort of improvement to ecology, that's been reviewed by the ecologist and the B&G officer, and we've considered that it's got a net gain, so it's in line with policy. We feel that a site visit may not necessarily be required. Yeah, that's what I think by members on the basis of this decision. That's my view.
John, have you finished?
Yeah, I mean, I was at the committee that decided the previous consent, which is considerably, the outline in the diagram shows it's considerably larger than the site that we're the application we're considering now. We did that without a site visit. So I don't think there's anything, it's going to do anything other than delay things. And I think given the situation we are, it's half built, which I'm not particularly happy with, but I'll deal with that when I come to the statement. I don't think there's anything to gain with a site visit, given that we granted something much, much bigger without a site visit. And I was on that committee, I remember it well.
I'll be remarkably exceptionally tolerant. Technically, that was a statement, not a question, but I'll allow that to pass. Chris? Tim, sorry? Right. If you wouldn't mind keeping that for the debate shortly.
I just
Chris?
got one quick question about the noise impact. It says about in there about the cladding reflecting the noise away from the homes and back onto the pitch. But I can't find anywhere if this noise impact assessment took into account there's more people walking around before and after the game outside of the ground. So was that taken into consideration? Because I've looked through it and I can't see that. Conrad.
Yeah, I think most of the impact assessment is taken from inside the ground during the match. So I'm not sure it counts for any additional noise from outside the stadium, from the spectators coming to and from matches. It's more about sort of when the match is ongoing and what noise emanates from the stadium itself.
Yeah, that's why I was looking through and I couldn't see if anything had been done, because obviously if there's a few thousand more people walking in and out, I know that those people will generate a lot of noise, and I just wondered why that wasn't taken into consideration.
As far as I'm aware, that's not been considered. I don't know if we would go that far in terms of, because obviously people are moving about all over the place. So it's something that could be done, I suppose, but a lot of that would be set against kind of the background noise of the traffic anyway. So there's quite a high background noise generally in that area from traffic. I'm not sure, that's really the main concern. It's more the concern of the impact from the stadium during the match. I mean, I've spoken to Environmental Protection, and it's not an issue that they've raised. They did raise an issue about sort of management of noise at the back panel within the stand, of kind of fans banging on that and how that could be resolved in management. But they haven't raised an issue of fans coming to and from the stadium and making noise. It's not a concern that's been made by them.
Okay, thanks for clarification.
Can I maybe just add, I mean, the purpose, though, of adding the events management plan is exactly to manage the situation before and after as well. And so there is therefore the opportunity to control.
Thank you very much.
Tom.
Thank you, and thanks, Conrad. Obviously, the applicant cracked on with groundworks before any of this stuff was submitted, and there's a comment on the application about the BNG calculation being based on a survey that was carried out in September after that work had started, and they allege in that comment that, you know, the survey doesn't take into account trees and habitat which was removed during that initial phase of work. Can you just clarify that point for us?
Yeah, so the BNG calculations, I believe, is a final calculation, and it's kind of delayed. So in this case, I believe it's calculated at a year after the development has commenced. So it takes into account anything that's happened in terms of habitat loss up until that point. So it's a future calculation, the BNG net gain, following development.
But the baseline, is that baseline, is that starting from, you know, pre any groundwork commencing, or are they taking their baseline from, you know, we've levelled the place, therefore our baseline's 1, and in a year's time it will be 2, therefore it's 100.
Sorry, yeah, the baseline would be the baseline of the site pre-development. So we would kind of calculate that before works have started. I believe that's how it's calculated.
So in their comment where they've said, you know, the survey doesn't include things that are have been removed in that first phase of groundworks, they're wrong about that.
So we would, yeah, it's considered the baseline is considered prior to any works commencing, so anything that's lost would be considered because prior to that it was there.
Great,
That makes sense.
that's what I was hoping to confirm. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any more questions? No? In that case, let's move to the debate. So, Tim, this is the right time to put in your order. Shall I kick off? The producers of the new Bristol Monopoly board game may have ignored the actual memorial ground, but reading this report and hearing the evidence we have, it seems to me that the club owner of Bristol Rovers and the management team, etc., have not ignored it, and they're seeking, as Mr. Chris Walker said, to actually bring us into the 21st century with modern facilities, which club participants, team members, and certainly the fans ought to expect. If I may dare, amongst some gas heads, mention actually a certain South Bristol club, both Bristol City and Bristol Rovers originally planned to redevelop their stadium away from their home grounds, but they obviously, on second consideration, preferred to actually develop on site. In my view, this is far more realistic, but it does bring various challenges and issues, not least the impact, of course, in a dense urban environment of the impact on residential amenity of their neighbours. So to me, I've looked very carefully at what we've seen about overshadowing, where the impact could be on neighbouring properties and gardens, of course, sunlight. I've also looked at noise. I've been reassured by the keenness, the conditioned keenness on event management plans and actually involving the community. I'm also reassured that actually that only a very small number of properties, but very minorly, are affected by a small reduction in sunlight. And that, to me, is a positive sign, of course. The other issue which needs to be said, and several people here have mentioned it already, is the parking, the transport situation. In my view, a long-term solution as the club develops the ground will only come by actually a more active transport plan. Now, we've heard the present framework plan isn't that, but it's designed to be incremental and morph into that. And it's important, as Councillor Ranald and others have said, it needs to develop and address the parking situation. And certainly, if we encourage, as we've seen, the club to make contributions and to public transport, that's all to the good. So overall, I think this is a heartily supportable and positive scheme. It involves new facilities for the new century, which gasheads and others deserve. So I will be supporting it and supporting the officer's recommendation. Andrew.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's really regrettable that the club proceeded to develop the new stadium without planning permission in place. You know, for such a prominent organisation, we expect the highest standards, and I think they've really set a poor example to other people in this city, and I hope it doesn't happen again. It's also regrettable that community engagement has been, shall we say, less than adequate to date, and the club needs to do better. It's in the heart of a community. It needs to be working with that community. So I'm pleased to see that going forward, the club is planning to improve community engagement with regular meetings. And as I've mentioned already, I do think that it would be quite good to placate local communities, local residents, if they were able to make sure that this piece of landlocked natural area could be publicly accessible. I think that would go some way to placating local residents. It's also regrettable, I think, that the club haven't fully exploited the sustainability of their new development. Yes, there will be photovoltaic cells, 15, I believe, but, you know, no rainwater harvesting, no green roofs. I think, you know, it could have been so much better. Having said all that, you know, I think there isn't any reason in particular to disagree with the officer's report. So, on balance, I will be supporting this application.
Thank you, Andrew. Fee.
Yeah, I think a theme that's recurred over and over again is that local residents have been treated fairly abominably by the club. And I think there's some of us in this room who feel uneasy about the fact that building took place before planning permission was granted. I mean, it's been unedifying to say the least. That said, I think that I don't see that we have, that's not a grounds to turn it down, and it looks to me as though our planning policies have been met. So whilst I really feel for local residents, especially those whose houses have been put into what is termed minor shadow, not by us, but by external bodies, I'm going to have to vote for it, but with rather begrudgingly, and they better do better next time, because if they want another application coming through.
Fabian.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who was at the 2012 committee that dealt with the original scheme, this is a fraction of the size of the scheme that we approved back in 2012. It would be, you know, I think it's a choice of are we builders or are we blockers, and I think it's, given what we did approve then, which was enormous, it would be ridiculous to block this. I do feel, for the residents, I would have liked it if we could have conditioned a lighter coating on the back walls of the buildings, especially where the buildings are closest to residential properties, particularly the ones in Alton Road. That could have been reflective, white or reflective. That would have potentially reduced some of the impact compared to a darker colour. If that's not reasonable to condition that, that's a shame. But it's still a fraction of the size of what could have happened some years back. So yeah, I will be supporting this. I do think it's, you know, there's no reason not to, given what was agreed before. But I would want to say that, echo the comments that have already been said about the need for better community engagement, and also not to start building stuff without permission. Supposing it is fairly basic, it can also be very expensive. We refuse something, you then have to take it down. You then go to appeal it, and then it's refused an appeal. You then have to take it all down, and that costs money. It wastes money. It wastes resources, and it's a bit presumptive. And I think as part of the community, you know, if they are planning further expansion in the years to come, we'll have to deal with that, each case on its merits. But I would strongly urge them not to stick a spade in the ground until permission is agreed for any further works. But I will be supporting this application as it stands.
I suspect from what we've heard from the club, the message has been well and truly learned. Chris?
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that message, because building something before planning permission and the way the residents are being treated in this is awful. And obviously this is only the first stage of their redevelopment. I think the members of the club were here and gave a statement. I think that they should take this into account moving forward. And I'm really disappointed in the club for not doing better with the local community, and actually to start building something before planning permission is ridiculous. But I can't find a material reason to vote against it, so I will be voting for it. And I hope that the club are listening to this committee.
I'm sure that's the case. Certainly cross-party and cross-chamber members have made this point. And obviously, we would expect at least 2 other phases of this scheme to come forward. So we're looking to see far better relations with their neighbours and the local community, of course. Paula.
Hello. Listening to Fabian actually talking about being on the committee in 2012 did remind me that the last time when I was on this committee before I went off to be Lord Mayor, one of the cases that we heard was a matter of a very small matter of about sort of like a 10-foot wall, and we didn't know, we couldn't quite visualize where it was, whatever, and everybody decided that we should go and have a site visit. And I was thinking about that when I was reading this report, because I hear what you say about the Light report, but to me, you know, it's a narrative report, and in that narrative, the tone for me is quite, you know, it's marginal. I feel when I'm reading this, I'm thinking, you know, it is very marginal. And we've seen a picture of somebody's house, which does to me look, you know, quite blighted by all of this. And I would really support John's request to have a site visit, because I just want to, I would be much happier. It's a big dominant thing in that community. And I would just be more comfortable coming to a decision if I'd been there and seen it. So, I mean, if it's not too late, I would still like us all to consider if we could postpone this and have a site visit.
It's certainly an option. Of course, members are free to, if they believe there is insufficient evidence for them to make a decision. My view, I have to say, I do concur with Fabian. I believe there's far more detail than we're ever likely to see in a site visit purely by reading not only the report but the supportive comments. So I don't think that would actually materially inform members in my view, but that's my view. I'm perfectly happy to take the poll of the committee if you wish. John?
Yeah, can I just say, and I am a gashead, which I declared at the Ashton Gate proposal, that there's loads to love about this from the football club point of view. There's just a couple of things not sitting easy with me. One is, as a proud gashead, I'm extremely disappointed in the community engagement, because I expect a lot better from a club like that I consider at the root of the community. The new papers just going online today, which I know is not a material thing, and we've heard about them, and the impact that this is having on the community and the neighbouring houses, and you know, maybe other members answering my question to the officers, it just makes me feel like I would prefer to have a site visit to feel it easy about everything and to reread all of the documents, even the ones that were published today. I'm broadly in support of this. I think I'm just airing the fact that I'm feeling a bit uneasy, and history tells me if I feel a bit uneasy, I should maybe seek clarification and a bit of security around the decision I'm asked to make.
Does anyone want to comment on that proposal? Tim?
Yeah, I won't comment on the site visit because I'm not a standing member of this committee, so I probably wouldn't end up going to that anyway. I do hear what people are saying about community engagement and building in advance of planning permission. I concur with everything that's been said. I think it's probably worth remembering that a lot of the objections around transport and noise are to do with increased capacity, and yet the actual increase in capacity over what was there in 2018 is very minimal. But it's also worth remembering that capacity is very rarely actually met at Bristol Rovers, sadly. So events that would be of increased capacity, you know, just because there's a new standard doesn't mean that there are actually going to be more people there on a regular basis. That could happen, but it doesn't mean it will. So on balance, I'll be supporting.
I'll put or invite actually Paula's proposal shortly. Can I say it's more than unfortunate the fact of recent history, or it may not be so recent, and we'll acknowledge the need for Bristol Rovers to actually improve its relationship with the surrounding community. In my view, actually, purely delaying prefabrications is not going to add to that or encourage it. It's actually going to the die-hard opponents will actually seize upon it and try to use it as a reason for further delay. So I don't personally support that. I also don't believe it will materially actually give us the information which we haven't got already from the experts. But that's my view. Paula, so you're formally proposing... No, I think, well, I don't mind who deferral pending a site visit, is that right? Is there a seconder? In that case, I'll do a name vote on that. So obviously the proposal is for deferral for a site visit first. So it's either for, against, or actually abstaining. I shall vote against. Chris?
Against.
Tim?
Against.
Fabian?
Against.
Andrew?
Against.
John?
For.
Tom?
For.
Paula?
For.
And V?
Against.
Right. So clearly on that basis, the resolution's been lost. Can I therefore formally move the approval of this recommendation, the officer's recommendation, with conditions? Can I have a seconder? Andrew, thank you. So obviously it's for, against, or abstain. I'll vote for. Chris?
For.
Tim?
For.
Fabian?
For.
Andrew?
For.
John?
For.
Tom?
For.
Paula?
Abstain.
Fee?
For.
Then it's overwhelmingly granted. Thank you very much. Can I formally thank you for attending and remind you our next meeting is on the 13th of December at 6 p.m. Thank you. I close the meeting. Slightly better. Didn't feel much better than an hour.